Welcome back to another episode of the Boss Streets podcast. Today we have Benny Fisher of the Big Fish Contracting Company. Benny, thanks for coming on. You're an entrepreneur. You have a podcast. You dabble in a lot of different things. One of the things we're curious about, though, is you picked the roofing industry, and that's an industry that not a lot of entrepreneurs might get involved in to start, or might not think it's a, for lack of a better term, sexy business to get involved in. Why'd you pick that industry?
Well, I didn't pick it. I think it picked me. And my uncle was a roofer and a commercial roofer in Pittsburgh, and I worked for him for 5 years. And he fired me 5 years into my journey of moving to Pittsburgh, and I realized that there was a huge gap in professional, well-branded concierge service, using residential roofing companies using technology, and like just making it like a real company, like that. Us young guys would want to do business with, because before it was just a bunch of chucking of trucks. You know what I mean? They'd have their can of Copenhagen, they'd have their Marlboros in their pocket. They'd be writing quotes on the back of a napkin, and nobody really knew what they were up to or what they were doing. And I knew that it was very visionary or very innovative to be able to create the brand like we've created with Big Fish, the cartoon fish. People always would, when I came up with the name, I kind of tested it on social media, on Facebook. This is back in 2015. This wasn't even that long ago. And everybody thought I was crazy because they thought that I was going to either be selling fish sandwiches down at, Heinz Field, or, renting canoes or kayaks on the Mon River. And I'm like, not when we create the best customer service roofing company, they'll know Big Fish is roofing and not the other way around. So here we are.
Nice. Wow. Why did your uncle fire you?
The common entrepreneur issues of not knowing how to manage the different energies of humans inside of a business. I believe that, I had a lot of ideas. I wanted to use a lot of technology. I kind of wanted to do things my way. And I think that that block, especially in a family business, I think he just probably got frustrated with me one day and, made the comment, you should go sell roofs for someone else. And I thought for a second, maybe I'll go work at Burns and Scalo, because they were the cool, big company. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to take a shot, take my entrepreneurial leap and dive right in and do it. And so 9 years later, here we are, still thriving, and it's been a fun journey.
So you mentioned in that kind of span there, having a lot of ideas, innovative ideas, wanting to use technology, and you decided to take this leap. What was that transition from being an employee to being a leader and trying to get people behind you to start this business?
Well, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was always good at sales. So I had a career in sales. I started to learn about this roofing industry. And then I was also learning about marketing, right? And because my uncle said he wanted me to market for him, but every time I came in with an idea of how we could market his business, he didn't really want to do it. But I was still very passionate because I was learning from guys like Gary Vee on social media back in 2011, 2012, 2013. I'd hear him come on YouTube or Facebook. I thought it was really incredible, but I had no idea that hiring employees, managing a team was going to be difficult. And I found out really quickly that was probably the most difficult thing, because I just thought, I'm going to go sell a couple roofs. I'm going to find me a cool crew to do the roofs. It's kind of like how the model works in Pittsburgh. And so the crew already knows how to do the roofing part. I'm just managing the sales side, the customer service side, making sure I order the materials, schedule the jobs, making sure that the customer doesn't see how we make the sausage, basically. They just want to they just want to eat the sausage sandwich. They don't want to see how it's made. They just want to know they get a nice, peaceful job, right? And so that's our job, as professionals. And but then we started doing a lot of business. I sold $1.3 million worth of roofing in my first year. And so that created a challenge of I was working 80 hours a week. I had a 1-year-old, I was trying to be a good husband, and I was just working like crazy. And I was making a lot of money because in roofing, there are, we're selling $20,000 items, right? We're not selling, $200 this and, $100 subscription to that, where it's sometimes the startup phase takes a little while to get successful. If you know what you're doing in a roofing business, you can make money off day one. I was profitable from day one, and I've never not been profitable ever since day one. First job I sold, profit, take that profit, invest into more marketing, more tools, technology, trucks, and I just keep taking that money and just keep investing it. I started my business with, I think, like $12,000. I don't even know if I tapped into all of it because I just started becoming profitable from day one. But I also knew the business, right? Because I got to watch from my uncle. And then I was able to market the product, which nobody in Pittsburgh back then was really good at marketing their roofing company. It was kind of always just word of mouth, or, and guys couldn't even do a bunch of jobs. And I was able to network and find a lot of crews and develop relationships. And so we were able to scale pretty quick. But the pain started when I started to hire my first salesperson, my first admin, my first project manager. And that was very difficult because I was just a sales guy.
So in that transition, did you learn how to be a leader, or do you think you had characteristics that were already a leader in itself?
Yeah, I would say that, I believe that there are some natural leadership tendencies that people have, but I do think that leadership is something that you learn because you have a good mentor or a model to kind of teach you those things. I don't think you're going to learn leadership in a book. I think that you'll learn some of the skill sets that it takes, but to actually see it modeled and actually practice those things, I think you need a really good mentor or a teacher, or you're going to learn the way I learned through the School of Hard Knocks, bumps and bruises, scrapes, lots of pain. I ended up starting to drink really heavily my second year in a business because I would just want to numb out, right? And so I joined a country club. I would stay out late with the boys, do all the things, right? Not want to go home because, home was tough, work was tough. And I developed, I don't know if they call it a drinking problem, but the drinking problem led to a drug problem. And I ended up overdosing on fentanyl in 2017. Wow. And that was probably a defining moment in my life. Trying to realize that I had a lot of skills and I know I had a lot of purpose for what I really wanted to do, but I didn't know how to harness all of that energy. And I also didn't know how to deal with the problems in the most emotional, supportive way, right? To be able to handle all that. Now, I've learned a lot of things since that incident. But yeah, it's definitely got its bumps and bruises being an entrepreneur.
And that is huge. With a chemical addiction, we'll call it, that you overcame. The other thing, when you guys were talking about leaders and leadership, in order to be a leader, you got to have followers, and you have to know how to work with people. And I think when I listened to that piece of your story, which I did not know, which I'm so thrilled that you shared that, because I always label that as somebody who has lived a little. I'm not judging anybody. I'm as strange as anybody out there. Okay. And I've been through so many different personal things, family things, and all that. But I look at people like us, like ourselves, and I'm like, man, these people have lived a little. Those are the people I trust, the ones that have really been at the top, been at the bottom, and now we're somewhere in between all the time. But it's all those little pieces that shape you, that make it really cool. Tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about when I said you have to have followers to be a leader. How did you start connecting with people and building this team that you have?
Yeah, so first it's to start with myself of building a customer base, right? And so I went out really hard and really promoted myself. I used social media. Facebook was really underutilized back in 2015. Mm-hmm. And I would friend request all my customers. And I would tell my customers, hey, I'm building a business. We'd love to connect with you on Facebook. I'm an implant. I'm not a Pittsburgh native. I'm from Canton, Ohio, and I moved over here in 2010. And so hey, I'm trying to, do some good in the community. I want to be able to share resources. I want you guys to be able to stay updated with what I got going on in my life. So I would friend request every customer. I would do a lot of local events, give back to the community where I could, in different fundraisers and things like that. I would sponsor all the kids' sports teams. To this day, if you're listening and you have a kid's sports team, just call my office up. We send you, we'll drop you $100, $200 every single time. Never to anybody know. And then it just started a word of mouth of hey, I went on Facebook and I was like, hey, I need a part-time mom to help me with some bookkeeping and some administrative tasks. Well, then I got a guy that I joined the country club, Chris Blass, actually. I don't know if you guys know Steve Blass, the famous Pittsburgh Pirate, the announcer. His son, I was friends with at the country club, and he said, hey, my wife's looking for something to do. The kids are all growing up. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Someone I can trust, someone that's going to, take care of the things, and got her. She was one of the first employees. Second person was I was in a fundraiser at the Monongahela Chamber of Commerce doing a Dancing with the Stars. And I made a post on Facebook and said, hey, I'm looking for a salesman, because I was getting requests for like siding jobs, and I didn't really know that much about siding. And so I just made a post, and this lady said, hey, my husband's looking for a job. He just got out of the building trades industry. He would love to go to work for someone, and I hired him, and so he was my first. And so a lot of that was just relationship, along the way. Now we have a much thorough hiring process. In the early days of Entrepreneur, it's kind of like, hey, whoever will come along for the ride, you have to hire, because it's not like I have some I'm not like PNC Bank that I can offer you all this, all these things, right, and all this stuff. And but I've learned a lot along the way that you have to be able to shift through that startup mode. And then as you get more professional, right now we have a filtration process, because it can't just be whoever Benny just meets. Like, I'd want to hire all three of you guys today, just because I fall in love with people, and I'm like, hey, I can change your life. If you want to make 6 figures a year, come work with me. You can do that like tomorrow, as long as you want to learn how to do something, a skill of talking to people and taking care of people. And that gets people excited, right? But I also make a lot of bad hires doing that too, because I believe in so many people. I think everybody can do it.
I think we're a lot alike in that. I have this tendency, maybe to a fault, where I put people on a pedestal, and they've got to give me a reason to knock them off that pedestal. Mm-hmm. When I worked in the corporate world, when I'd look at people that they would bring on, a new finance director or something, and I'd be like, man, look at the pedigree here. They went to this school, they did that. Then all of a sudden, like 3 years later, they're fired for shuffling money around that shouldn't have happened. Things like that. I'm like, man, I had you here. What happened in the process? But yeah, that's really cool. I love that piece of the story, and it's interesting for people to learn about. I think some of these failures too, when you're hiring people, when you're looking at qualities, like when I used to interview people to bring them on, I would ask them about their backgrounds and were they involved with sports and things like that, because I feel like you've got to go through some things in order to be able to connect with people. And everybody's wired differently. That's what makes it cool. But you mind if I go that route with the question about the contracting and that connotation?
Yeah, go.
Here's the thing, Benny. I think you've done an amazing job. We talked about this a little bit earlier from a marketing and branding standpoint. So I told you I host a fishing expo called Muskie Max. The show ended. It's always the first weekend in March. So I'm driving back we hosted it in Washington, Pennsylvania this year. And I'm on either 376 or 79, somewhere around there, and I see this giant all black billboard with this lime green chartreuse looking logo of a fish, and it said Big Fish Roofing, I believe. What was on there?
Yellow. It's bright yellow.
Is it yellow?
Yellow.
Okay.
Black and yellow for Pittsburgh.
It's amazing. But when I saw that big black reverse, I knew a little bit about design and things like that. That's part of my world. And I thought, man, this person knows. They know how to put things together. You have somebody who knows how to do this. I thought, that's cool. Has nothing to do with fishing that I know of. Maybe there's more to that story we can get into.
My last name's Fisher, and I'm not a small guy, so they call me Big Fish, and so we call it the Big Fish Contracting Company.
So that's brilliant because it's so simple, right?
And homeowners laugh and chuckle every time. They're like, why is it called Big Fish?
Oh, man.
And like, if it's me saying it, I'm like, well, my last name's Fisher, and I'm not a small guy, and all of a sudden, all the old ladies go, ah!
Yeah, right. So I go to your website, and I see there's not only the professional services that you offer, but there's also there's words like innovation, there's professional speaking and mentoring, things like that. And I'm like, man, this is crazy, because oftentimes contractors have this reputation, like you started out talking about people with the Marlboro cigarettes and the little T-shirt pocket and stuff like that. That's one thing. But I think there's this, I see this surge of people like yourself. You're in a professional services industry. You know something about marketing and branding, and you know something about people, and you've got a story to share. I think back in the day, traditional contractors didn't do any of that kind of stuff. They had a logo, and they had a truck, and they had a truck magnet and some other things like that, and they either got bigger or smaller or bought by somebody or something like that. I look at you, and I look at like Brian Hess from the Pavement Group.
Love Brian.
There's a lot of common threads, right? As far as the way that you've been able to rope in your personal brand along with your business brand and then offer more than just roofing services and, those kind of things. Tell me a little bit about that. How and why did you go that route? And this marketing brilliance that you have, is that part of your background? Did you hire somebody to do that? It's really neat how I see it coming together.
So yes, and yes. As far as like the marketing, like I said, I learned a lot from Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V on social media, but like, just listen to some things. I also think I've always had a creative eye. One of the things in sales is like people buy off who they know, like, and trust. Well, the first rule in sales is like, they got to know you, right? They got to like you. Well, in marketing, it's basically, instead of sales 1-to-1, marketing is 1-to-many, right? And so you got to be able to catch their attention. And then you also, I believe that, we all have widgets, right? Let's take the Apple computer, for instance. Well, there's 1,000 computer companies. But if I walk down the street in downtown Pittsburgh and I asked them, name me a computer company, I bet you 9 out of 10, maybe all 10, they're going to say Apple, 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 Apple. Some of them can't even afford them. Some don't even have them, but that's what they're going to say. Mm-hmm. And it's because they've created a masterful way to tell stories and to create really premium branding, boxing, service when you walk into the Apple store, and they create users that are like glued to their product. Everyone's on it. Everyone's seeing it. Everyone's talking about it. And they create this own ecosystem, right? And no matter what you do, whether you're, selling food or, you're a plumber, a roofer, we all have the widgets, right? It's what you do with the widget and how you tell the story, how you position yourself. And so, there's thousands of roofing companies in Pittsburgh. And how are you going to stand out? Because in theory, for the most part, we're all putting the roofs on the same way, as long as you're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to get that attention? And I believe that it starts with, first of all, knowing who you are, being unique, right? Having core values, right? This is one of the things I learned from the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, which I picked up in 2020, when I really was starting to have a lot of chaos in my business because we were growing and we were doing things, but we weren't very organized, right? And we kind of all knew why we did things on the inside of our hearts, but like we didn't have a good way to like really translate that out publicly, right? And then as you're hiring more people, how do you communicate these values, right? And it was through Gino Wickman's book Traction that we were able to start to do that. But as far as the marketing strategy goes, it's really just be consistent, right? I see a lot of people that like, they have 3 letters in their last name and a couple triangles for a roofing company. Not that there's nothing wrong with that, but it all starts to look the same. Mm-hmm. Big Fish doesn't look like any other roofing company. And like, there's nobody else doing what there are now a lot of cartoon mascots as roofing companies and as other contracting services and things like that, which I always take a little bit of pleasure in thinking that I started to pave the way in at least contractors for them to pay attention about marketing and branding. Mm-hmm. Because I'm a kid that came out in 2015 and started a roofing company, and I surpassed guys that were 30 years in the business in sales, and people couldn't figure out why.
You knew about the industry from working with your uncle, and you learned more as you went, right? But when did you realize, or how did you realize that you had an important story to share, and then decided, hey, I'm going to build this personal brand and start pushing myself out there? That's a really hard thing to do. Oh, that was a
pivot. Yeah. So that pivot, believe it or not, I was very familiar with personal brand because I saw, again, I want to keep talking about Gary V do it, right? Mm-hmm. Gary V has this huge 2,000 person marketing agency. He got famous for, helping his dad's wine shop on YouTube. But everybody just knows Gary V. Like, most people don't even know about what Gary V does. They just see Gary V, the personal brand. And it was in 2021. I was on a golf course playing in the member tournament at South Hills Country Club, and I get a call from my sister. And she told me that my brother got murdered. Dead on the spot, Saturday afternoon, Canton, Ohio, he died. I'm here golfing in Pittsburgh. And my world just paused, and it was like it was a very traumatic event, right? He was my little brother, and I thought for a second, I'm like, man, there's got to be more to life. I kept thinking through, like, why did God have the grace to save my life through all the different, trials and tribulations I've been through? And I got back from the funeral and doing all the things with my family, and I realized that, like, I think my purpose is bigger in life than just to own a roofing company or just to, like, be this awesome CEO of this rising star in Pittsburgh. And I actually started a relationship with Gary Vee, and I had this conversation with Gary Vee this summer in 2021, and he said, hey, Benny, I think you should start a podcast. That's why I love what you guys are doing here. Because a podcast is all about sharing stories, and yeah, sure, it shines a light on our businesses a little bit, but more importantly, it creates a genuine connection. Well, once I started to do the podcast, that's when I came up with the whole idea of the Big Fish Cares, right? And then I've always been the guy that did workshops and seminars of training even my competitors to teach them about sales and marketing and operating their business, and even other entrepreneurs from other industries. I would do those in Pittsburgh. I'd hold these little classes and workshops, and so then that's when I created BennyFisher.com for all of the other services, right? Like, has my podcast, my consulting, I'm a keynote speaker. Because those are things I'm passionate about. Those are things that I love helping. I know this show's a lot geared towards younger entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs, people that might have less than like 10 employees, or they're in startup mode. You could be 50, 60 years old and start a business tomorrow. Doesn't mean like you're still at an early stage, right, in your entrepreneurial journey.
You don't even look 60.
Yeah, somebody in here 60. I don't know who though. It's not me, right? Anyway. So that's how I created BennyFisher.com, just because, what? All Benny Fisher is the authentic, loving human that has a purpose, and it's just more of an amplification and a reflection of my values and like how I want to show up in the world.
Well, Benny, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I'm sorry you went through the trauma of losing a brother. I can't even imagine. But isn't it weird how in life, again, that living a little, how it kind of propelled you into sharing a story, giving you the courage and the reason to share a story. That's cool.
I have a keynote. It's called Turning Your Pain into Purpose. And to me, that's been the best way to kind of heal from type of trauma, like any type of trauma, whether it's, losing a loved one or going through, I went through a divorce, like anything that you go through in life. You can look at it in a different lens and figure out that it didn't happen to you, it happened for you, right? And there's a why and something bigger that is out there. And so I always try to keep my brother's legacy alive by that moment in life told me, man, like, I'm built for more, right? And maybe just being an entrepreneur and running my own business and making a bunch of money, like there's more to life than just that. And so giving back by, teaching people things that I'm learning, because I'm a sponge, man. I'm constantly just soaking in information.
That's cool.
I appreciate you sharing that story, and I appreciate you opening up about that. One of the things that I think is not talked enough about when you talk about entrepreneurship is the stress and the mental health around it. So my question for you is, how would you advise entrepreneurs who might be in that startup phase where things are starting to get hectic and chaotic, kind of relieve that stress and focus on their mental health? Because as a leader, you have to be sharp to keep your team sharp. And so I believe that if a leader is not at their best, then the organization might not be at their best. Mm-hmm. So how would you advise entrepreneurs in that kind of stage of chaos to keep their cool and their mental health in check?
That's a big question. Man, the way I'm trying to figure out how to answer this. If I would answer it now, but I'm trying to think if I would actually listen to this advice if I was them in the middle of it. See, that's the hard part, because it's kind of like when your mom and dad try to give you some advice, you don't really it doesn't sit with you, and it's like, oh, like I could say go to therapy, go to do this stuff. But I think the first thing that you need to understand as an entrepreneur is that you are driven. Okay, there's something about you. I talk about Gino Wickman a lot. He just came out with a book called Shine. And in there, he's got 3 discoveries. And one of them is that I am driven, and for driven entrepreneurs, whether you're, 10% of the world has got this driven gene. There's like a gene. It's inside, you're hardwired inside your brain. You have this, like, you can't help but go, right? Navy SEALs have it, athletes have it, Wall Street guys have it, and entrepreneurs have it, right? And so about 4% of the world is in that entrepreneurial category. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because it creates all these amazing ideas and all these amazing things and this amazing success, but you leave a trail of dust and debris in the path, right? And it can be very detrimental to your mental health, because we cope with things and we're a lot higher risk for addiction, because we don't have the emotional regularity. We crave dopamine. We crave that rush. That's why a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we find a lot of success in our business. Our business, our outer world business, is a reflection of that need for speed, that need for a little bit of risk, that need to like do something that nobody else has done before. But there's a downside, right? And if you haven't been able to figure out how to manage that, it can be detrimental. And so Gino talks about the 10 disciplines. And I think that the 10 disciplines are really good for any entrepreneur. And it starts with having a 10-year mindset. I'm like, where do you want to be in 10 years? But like, more importantly, like, who do you want to be? Because I think once you learn through the entrepreneur journey, it's basically just a crash course for personal transformation. Going from the old self to the new self and really being able to create new paradigms and reinvent yourself, constant reinventing, because we're driven and we're going a little bit faster than the average person. We're also learning at a speed, whether it's intentional or, like I said, the bumps and bruises and the scrapes and the pain. But we keep constantly transforming. We're constantly that cocoon and that butterfly, right? And so that 10-year thinking is a big part of that. Discipline number 2 is taking time off. Most of us, because our parents were so hardworking, because they grew up in this age of working those 40, 60-hour week jobs, getting overtime, working down at the steel mill, or working at the hospital if you're here in Pittsburgh, work, or you're a teacher, or you're, those jobs that you're the mailman, you just work, and that's like everyone just promotes hard work, which is very noble. But then as an entrepreneur and you're driven, we're just working twice as much. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to take time off. And when you take time off, don't think about your business. Spend time with people that you love, hobbies, other things like that. The other thing is knowing thyself. Discipline number 3 talks about this, and it's knowing actually who you are. Because most of the time we're running through life, and most entrepreneurs, if they're trying hard, they've disappointed a lot of people along the way. The school teachers didn't understand me. They didn't know how to deal with me. My mom and dad didn't really know how to deal with my energy, my ADHD-ness. And a lot of times we get labeled a bunch of things, and then we own those labels. And sometimes they're good labels, but most of the time they're bad labels. And so we have to kind of figure out actually who we are. And one of the best ways I found to do that is through assessments. And so I love the Strength Finders assessment, a DISC assessment, a Myers-Briggs. There's the Enneagram. There's all kinds of assessments out there that if you take them and you're honest about it, it'll give you a report back and telling you about all your strengths, maybe some of your blind spots, some of your opportunities for improvement. And then the best is just to ask people that you love and trust, like, hey, what are my core traits that I'm really good at, right? Mm-hmm. And so discipline number 4 is the one that entrepreneurs have trouble with, is called be still. This is where you should take 30 minutes every day in prayer, contemplation, journaling, meditation, to quiet our mind. So that way we can be more focused and a little bit more clear on the actual priorities, because most of us, especially the early stage, everything's on fire. It's like we're in the kitchen and the whole kitchen's on fire. We got 20 orders and it's chaos, and 4 of our people just quit. And it's that's how our whole life is as entrepreneurs. Discipline number 5 is know your 100% work container. Know how many hours a week that you want to work, and know how many weeks a year that you want to work. Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs that don't take vacations. Mm-hmm. I know a bunch of the old school contractors in Pittsburgh. They would send their family on vacation because they had to stay back and take care of. Well, that's not healthy, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to lead you to burnout, right, and fatigue.
So Gino Wickman, though, that's the 5. The 10 disciplines, and that's from Gino Wickman, right?
Yeah, these are from the book Shine.
Okay, good. And in his, he's the entrepreneurial operating system.
Yeah, he wrote Traction, Rocket Fuel, right, all the EOS books. Yeah. But he's got this new book out because he realized we can teach you all the tools how to scale your business and how to do all the awesome things and have this outer world success. But what he discovered is that when he got to the top of the mountain and rang the bell and sold EOS, that he had a lot of trauma and a lot of pain that raised up, mm-hmm, right? And he realized that there was 10 disciplines that if every entrepreneur had to do these early on in business. That's why I love talking about these 10 disciplines, because it's one thing to retire, get it to 60, 65, and then slow down, chill out, learn about some of this stuff, and be like, man, I wish I would have done that in my 20s. Well, here I'm in my 40s and I'm trying to implore entrepreneurs to start living like this, because I've been living by these disciplines for the last 3 to 4 years, and they've really changed my life, and they've given me more energy. I'm actually a better entrepreneur. Some of my tough guy buddies might call me a little woo-woo, but I mean, I'm telling you what, it's working. And there's 5 other disciplines if we have time to get to them. But
yeah, I want to dive into Gino Wickman a bit, because you said that you had coffee with him and you kind of
just last week. Yeah, it was awesome.
That's awesome. I would love to meet him. His book Traction, and then the EOS system has changed my life. Like we were a mess. So I'm curious.
We all are.
One of the things I want to talk about is you kind of label yourself on your website and your LinkedIn as a CEO / visionary. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the key principles that Gino talks about for an entrepreneurial organization, is that a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this vision, they have these ideas, and they're scatterbrained, ADHD all over the place, and they lack having a partner who is that integrator, that operational person that can actually pull the pieces together. How would you suggest to entrepreneurs finding a good partner to help scale your business?
That is a good one. First of all, I have you read the book Rocket Fuel. It deals with that same exact thing, that visionary and integrator, what a visionary is, what an integrator is, how they're the yin to the yang. But also know that the world has a 4-to-1 ratio of visionaries to integrators. Okay, so there's 4 visionaries out there, but there's only 1 integrator. And so there's a shortage of integrators, right? Integrators are the people that can be consistent. They think logically. They like the mundane. They beat the drum every single day. Tap, tap, tap. We're us visionaries, man. We're like, go, go, go. We're operating out of our gut. It's all feel. It's very emotional. And so to find somebody, you got to find somebody that's got the skill sets. And that's why, I love these assessments. You can find out, someone else is out there wired perfectly for the integrator that you need. In every business, the integrator role is probably a little bit different. So make sure you really understand what you need that person to do, what they need to be responsible for. But the first and foremost is they got to align with your values. And that's why it's so important to have core values, because you can have somebody in the right seat, right? Like they could be the financial guy. They could be the guy that's a good manager. He knows how to do process and all the things that most entrepreneurs are bad at. But if he sucks, if his values aren't aligned, and if he doesn't honor the role of what you've built, because I actually had an experience with a guy where he was the right seat, but he was the wrong person, because he wanted to do everything his way and he wanted to do it like this, and he was actually, the culture was actually eroding at my company, and so I had to make a change, and that's when I found the book Rocket Fuel, and then found a gentleman that actually really helped me get out of the day-to-day and actually ran the company and was a partner, and things went really well. And so, yeah, that's a tough one. They do have, if you're willing to invest some money, there's services out there. There's a company called Vision Spark that will do this recruitment placement to find you an integrator. That's really good. There's also a company called Titus Talents that would actually do that search for you, because it is a big role. And it's a really important job, and it's something I wouldn't take lightly, and you don't necessarily want to try 3 different ones before you figure it out, because that could cause a lot of pain. Because this is the person that's going to execute your vision and get all of those things done. Every great company, like Walt Disney, for instance, his brother, Roy Disney, was his integrator. Nobody knows about Roy. Roy's kind of behind the scenes guy. Walt gets all the credit. But without Roy Disney, you would not have the Magic Kingdom. You would not have Mickey Mouse the way you know it today. And so, and that goes for any company.
100%. And kind of going off that, you had met Gary Vee, is that correct?
Oh yeah. So I met Gary Vee for the first time in 2019 at a sports card show. Bought a Michael Jordan rookie card off of him. He had some K-Swiss entrepreneur shoes, and I showed him those. Didn't really get on his radar. 2021 comes out, and he's launching an NFT project called VeeFriends. And I had just sold 25% of my company, and so I had a bunch of cash I wanted to invest. So I invested in Gary Vee's project, not because I was into NFTs or VeeFriends or anything like that, but because I wanted to get on Gary Vee's radar. I wanted to learn from Gary Vee. I just wanted to get a seat at the table. And so through that investment,
that's like a play out of his book, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, if you know Gary Vee, that's the book. Just play the book. Yeah, just run the play.
Yeah.
Just run the play. So I ran that play, got on Zoom calls with them, was in like some group mentoring things. I actually got invited to a couple of events, private events. One was Shaquille O'Neal. There's 100 of us there. I got invited to his birthday. Today's actually his birthday. His 49th birthday is actually today. I was at his 48th birthday party last year. It was at Chuck E. Cheese's in Brooklyn, New York. That was cool. There was like 50 or 60 of us there. I was able to do a podcast with him. I actually flew to New York City, had my team there, and we filmed a podcast, the Big Fish Cares podcast. I think it's episode 77. And it was really cool because it's surreal. It's in his office, his iconic office with all those little toys and stuff behind it. And I'm sitting there interviewing the guy that I really looked up to and really learned a lot about social media marketing and marketing in general, but more importantly, believing in yourself and having some really, it's almost like having a mentor that you looked up to that didn't really know, but he literally inspired me to start my own business, telling me I could do it, right? Like, and just take your shot, right? And, common things that you see and think, but like when you're on Facebook, you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. No, just go do it. Like, go do it and figure it out, man. You got to, fail fast, right? And then I was a speaker at his conference last year. He has a conference called VCon, and I was actually the opening speaker at his conference, and that was
that's wild.
It's been a wild journey, man. I've been very blessed to meet some of my heroes.
Because one of the things I'm curious about him, and I want kind of get some feedback from you or insight, is, I do listen to Gary Vee. I read some of his books, listened to his podcast, and, the one takeaway I get from him is like, you're right, just do it. This hustle mentality, like the entrepreneur is a hustler, like, go out, try to make your living, hustle, hustle, hustle. But he has grown this incredible marketing organization. Like you said, he has 2,000 plus employees. So that hustle mentality at some point gets you so far. Kind of like you said in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, you're hustling, and then chaos happens. You got to kind of restructure and get organized. He paints that picture of this, hustler, entrepreneur, visionary, kind of like yourself, but he runs this incredible organization. What insights have you gotten from him to kind of help, structure and run a successful business that just isn't chaos or hustle driven?
So he has really good people. Okay. And one of the things about Gary that I've noticed, and Gary's an operator. He's a true operator. I am not an operator. Like Gary,
that's interesting to me.
Gary's actually still he's still going to meetings and stuff like that. Most people would think, oh, he's just speaking and flying around the country and doing stuff. No, man, he is still hustling in his business, like operating his business. He's involved in a lot of different details. I am a different type of entrepreneur than Gary Vee. I like more of the Gino Wickman style, right? Like, and so I like Gary Vee for the one thing of like, you got to hustle, but like you also have to have macro patience. Okay. So like Gary Vee talks about micro hustle. Like, so for instance, like if a customer calls, dude, we're going to get there fast and take care of the customer. But if I fail over the next couple months, I'm going to have patience for myself and not think, oh man, this business isn't working out. Right. And so I'm going to have macro patience. What I love about Gino Wickman is, and on my podcast, I think it was like episode 100, we talk about how to balance ambition with like how to balance your ambition and still have peace, right? As an entrepreneur. So that way you don't burn out. That way you can be there for your family and loved ones, right? And I think that to me it's a healthier thing because I've seen too many people just not make it. I've seen some people die, because they're also trying to be like someone else. That's the other thing, early on in my career, I was like, oh man, I'd love to be like Grant Cardone or Gary Vee. And like, then I realized, no, I don't. Cause once I got up close to him, I'm like, I don't want to be like that. I actually don't want to be like that. And then I realized I just got to be Ben, right? I got to be authentically myself. I can borrow little pieces of people to influence, and put little parts in to that to like kind of like make up, the Benny Fisher, CEO or leader. But I still got to be Benny, right? And I still got to do me because like I want to come home and see my kids. Like I want to have a good relationship with my wife. Like I want to have those things, right? I want to have time for other passions. Like I love doing this. We ain't making no money. You guys paying me because I ain't making no money today, right? So
how much you cutting the check for it?
Yeah,
we
not enough.
We get a check. Let's do, yeah. So again, at the end of the day, but I love doing this. I'd actually rather be doing this than selling something at this point in my life. Now, keep in mind, I've sold millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff already. And so like, some guys, well, it's easy for him to say, and I get that. But you have to have fun, right? You have to have fun in life. And one of the things, this kind of ties back to the 10 disciplines. Discipline number 6, say no often. Because as entrepreneurs and as salespeople, we say yes, 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 yes. Oh, yes, I can do that. Oh, I can take care of that. We serve others almost to a fault. We say yes to everyone. We say yes to our kids. We say yes to our spouses. We say yes to our business employees. Yes, 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 yes. Well, someone's got to execute all those yeses. And that's usually where we have a problem, right? And so learning the art of saying no, but how do you know what to say no to? Well, we got to know we got to know where we're going. And anything that's not kind of I look at it like a flashlight, or it's like a flashlight. But things that are outside the beam, hey man, I can't do that for you. Like for instance, at Big Fish, like we're not going to cut your grass. We're not going to paint your house. We say no gracefully. We send them a referral. We say, hey, why don't you call so-and-so painter or so-and-so landscaper? I get a lot of requests to coach entrepreneurs, but I don't coach every entrepreneur. Like they have to meet a certain criteria, right? Like I can't say yes to everyone, right? Because I'm a finite resource. I only have so much time in the day, right? And so learning how to say no is a really good one. I believe that don't doing $25 an hour work. $25 is just a number. Whether you don't do $10 an hour work, $25 an hour work, $100 an hour. There's some things I delegate that are $500. I delegate attorney stuff to $500 an hour. But most of us, because our parents grew up work, hustle, we as entrepreneurs decide we have to do everything. Mm-hmm. Well, we're not good at anything.
Right. Delegation is tough because one of the things I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is delegating tasks. And one of the questions I have here is you have this great personal brand. Your business is tied to your name is tied to your business, and it's your name on the door. So how do you combat people making mistakes and it kind of reflecting on you? Because your personal brand is your business in a way. So how does that bother you when mistakes are made, and how do you kind of tackle that?
I love mistakes. At first I didn't. 2015 to 2020, I would it would bother me. I get frustrated. But then I realized mistakes are what helps everybody learn. And they're not mistakes. They're just learning lessons. They're little bumps along the road. And then it also, once I saw the same mistake, let's just say Bob made a mistake, Harry made a mistake, Susie made a mistake, then I'd be like, this is where I got to be the smart one and say, all right, well, can we put a training in, or can we put something in place to where we can teach everyone at the company so that way they don't keep making that same mistake? Let's be smart about it, right? But no, I encourage mistakes. I encourage, failing fast is like a motto that we have. We can always make anything right. I am not a surgeon. We are not saving lives. At the end of the day, no one's ever lost their life in a house because the roof wasn't put on right. We can always redo the roof. I've redone many roofs. We put it on. I wasn't happy with it. I didn't like the way the guys did it. We tore it off and we did it again. I probably do that twice a year. I'm not proud of that. But when you do as many roofs as we do, we're not perfect. You're not paying us to be perfect. You're paying us to come back and make it right.
Right.
And that's the difference between a solid business and a solid leader with a solid team versus a fly-by-night, or even worse, the guys that look like big fish because they can put up a fancy graphic, put it on a van. I mean, that's the easy part. But living behind those values and living behind that brand, that is a totally different thing. And to your other point, I haven't had a customer call me in 3.5 years. I've been out of the day-to-day of my business for 3.5 years. I haven't had a customer call me in 3.5 years because I have people that are taking those calls because they want that responsibility. Because if I was taking the call, well, then I wouldn't need, let's say you were working, I wouldn't need you to help me if I'm still taking the call. And so we develop, a protocol for escalated situations. Now, not that I wouldn't talk to a customer, but I'm never the first call. Every once in a while, I'd say once a month, maybe I'll call a customer just to say hi, to kind of do that. But most customers in Pittsburgh don't even know my name anymore.
Do you think that it's more important to have processes or good people in a business to kind of, as a leader, step out of
that's like the chicken with the egg.
Yeah, seriously.
So I would say that people are always going to trouble. 82% of the problems in business are people-related problems and issues, right? Process, everybody has a process, whether it's an efficient process, whether it's clearly defined, whether it's, whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't care if I could hire someone right now to set up this I could hire a podcast production person, put an ad. I could take the first guy that walks into this building. He's going to have a process. It's going to be his process, and that's probably not going to be good, but he has a process. But it's more about the person, right? And so the person we can implement, we can make processes better. The person is going to write the process. A good person is going to write the process. Like, I like to hire people that I don't have all the processes figured out. I'm trying to hire you so then you can help develop the process, because I want you to be the expert in the thing that you do as part of the assembly line of, what we do. So in any business, you have an assembly line of service or products that you're doing, all the way from marketing all the way to sending that final invoice, and all the little check marks in between with sales and operations. And I want to hire specialists that in each spot that are going to design their own process, make it better, and then share it with all people. Part of EOS, they talk about process followed by all. Most companies have a process. Some of them don't have them written down. Most of them don't have them written down, believe it or not. But then the harder part is the getting all 25 or 100 or however many people following that same process to the letter of the law. That's why Chick-fil-A is so successful. Because it's the same thing all the time. It's like a well-oiled machine. That thing could be wrapped double around the building, and you're through in like 5 minutes. You're like, how? And it's always right. Right. It ain't like McDonald's where you don't get the order right. How do they do that? Great people make great processes.
So there was something you said earlier that I just wanted to throw a comment back out. You said, think about where you want to be in 10 years, what you want to do in 10 years, that little window. My thing is just change it up a little tiny bit. Where do I not want to be in 10 years? That's just easier for me to wrap my tiny little mind around that. And maybe that helps somebody else. The other thing is, and it kind of piggybacking what you were just saying right now, Benny, you were talking about, certain processes and systems and training people and things like that, but the quality of the person. With the people who you hire that you work with, and I don't know if you contract or how that works, if those are all your employees, but how do you indoctrinate them into your way of thinking? So it's Benny Fisher's kind of model, to run the company. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
So it's really, when you go to find the right people, it's all about, hey, are they a value alignment? First, I look for value alignment. Okay. So that's the right person component. And we do that through a series of questions. We talk about our core values. We ask questions around values to see if they exemplify the values that we're looking for. Think of different cultures. So think of like a hardcore Marine culture, think about that locker room culture versus think about the culture at a tech company with a bunch of geeks running behind a computer. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different set of values. All great people, right? Everyone's a good person. Mm-hmm. It's a different set of values. So how do I make sure that I don't accidentally hire the Marine for my tech company that's not going to fit in? How do I accidentally hire the tech person to go to my Marine deployment, right? And so because again, that's a dramatic example. But like, how do we want our locker room? Like, what do we stand for? Who are we? And that's through our core values. And so once you've identified if it's the right person, now we're looking for skill set. Okay. So once we go from the heart, then we're going to the hands, like what can they do with their hands and their mind, right? To figure out if they are, like, I don't want to hire you for a sales job if you're an accountant, but because you're desperate and you just got fired from, your accountant job and you just saw a job at Big Fish and it's a sales job and your wife's telling you got to go to work and you're, because you remember what your mom and dad do, always had to have a job. Don't matter what it is, you have to have a job. Well, you sneak in, right? And you say whatever you got to say to get this sales job. But then 6 months later, I find out that you suck at sales because you're an accountant. But most people, when they're hiring people, they get what I call happy ears. They get excited that anybody that even wants to come work for them. So they just take them because we get desperate, right? And so it's a conundrum, right? And so you really just got to find the right person, make sure they're qualified, and make sure they have the skills. And once you do that, ask them some tough. One of the favorite questions that I love interviewing people is, and I think you'll appreciate this, is I'm going to hire you. We're going to plaster your face all over social media and tell you we're so excited to have you working at our company. And then what's going to happen is some person is going to direct message me and say, I can't believe you hired him. He did this. What is that going to be? What's the worst thing someone can say about you? I ask this in every interview. And man, dude, we get the real talk real quick. Because I always said, don't worry, whatever it is. And I tell them a little bit about my story.
Right.
Because I ain't no perfect saint.
It's such a great way to pull it.
But then I say, well, I need to be able to know how to protect you. I said, because we're the king of second chances around here. I said, but if you don't tell me now, I find out later, that's going to be a problem.
What's the craziest story you've heard when you asked that question?
I had a guy. Don't shake your head. That was a great question. See, he's getting in the danger zone, man. This is okay. This is how you're going to elevate your podcast, by asking more questions like this. So I had a kid tell me that he looked like you, but he was like a lot younger. And he told me, because he was like 20 years old, and he told me that he had gotten a fake ID to buy beer with. And then again, there was a marketing manager in the room and the sales manager was in the room, and I always do the final interview just to get all this stuff out because I'm the guy that asks the weird questions. And he said that, and I said, that's cool. I said, do you have the fake ID on you? And he literally pulled his fake. I got this kid to pull out a fake ID, and like everyone else in my leadership team is looking at me like I'm crazy. And then now they're looking at like they're not going to hire him. I'm like, no, I'm going to hire this kid. Like he's got ingenuity, he's got innovation, he's trying to figure things out. And I looked at the fake ID. I said, that's not even that good of a fake ID, man. Like you need to go back to school for that. But yeah, that's a funny story. You know, I've also had a guy that didn't tell me, and then I found out, and this is one of the reasons we started doing background checks. I found out that this dude like committed some like money crimes, which I can overcome a lot of things, but like it was in Missouri, it was in a different state, and it was like dealing with homeowner type stuff. Like that's one thing, like because we deal with homeowners and money, and like I don't know, I mean, like I'll refer you to like the park and rec system, and you can clean up garbage in the park or something, but you can't take money. Like that's just one of those things I can't make a comeback from, right? Like they'll put me in the paper for stuff like that. But right. I mean, I'll hire anybody that's had a hard life, that's trying to make themselves better. But
I like that. You said you're the company of second chances. That's good.
Yeah, well, we're the country of the second chance.
Yeah. True.
I mean, I'm living proof of that, man. I mean, you guys haven't even got into half my story, but that's all right. We'll keep it. This is the PG version right now.
Yeah,
that's
There's
good.
a whole nother podcast coming up.
But going off of Sean's question about where you don't want to be in 10 years, you're an entrepreneur, you have a successful business here. Where do you see yourself in this business going in the next 10 years? Do you have future plans? What's the deal
Myself or my business? Because I look at them, that's the other thing that we can talk about. My identity is completely detached from my company.
Let's talk about both then. Where do you see the business and yourself? What's your vision for yourself and the business?
Well, I believe that the Big Fish Contracting Company is going to keep doing what it's been doing as far as roofing, siding, and gutters in Pittsburgh area now. I believe I'm looking into some things that are going to advance technologically to where we can be able to provide better customer service by using AI. We'll be able to get estimates even tighter and cleaner using AI. We're already using 3D imagery of a home to like be able to show you like what your siding is going to look like, what your roof's going to look like. I've been using that for like 5 years, and so that's been really cool. We're working on some systems just to make a better homeowner experience. How you can buy a roof. Like you can go on our website and you can get a roof quote without even talking to a salesperson. It'll do a satellite image of your house. It'll get the perimeter. It'll get the square footage, and it'll give you a pretty good budget number for your roof. I mean, it's pretty accurate. Now, we're still at the point right now where like project advisor still needs to come out. We got to check some chimneys. Pittsburgh, they got crazy chimneys, some skylights, but at the end of the day, like you can have a shopping experience, like kind of like an Amazon experience. And so I'm toying with that because I believe in 5 years from now, it will be a lot less like likely that the guy with the clipboard comes to your house and tries to sell you a $20,000 product. You'll be doing more of like an Amazon or Apple experience through Zoom or I was selling Zoom during COVID. Like we were one of the fastest growing companies in Pittsburgh right after COVID, and it's because we use technology. And so that's not going to stop. That's going to keep going. I could see, automated deliveries and Teslas and, driverless vehicles delivering stuff and all kinds of like wild things that like, I don't know if homeowners in Pittsburgh listen to, they're probably going to think I'm a little crazy because Pittsburgh's old school. And so I've had to battle some of that stuff, right? With some people, it's too much technology sometimes,
right.
But
Going off that though, solar. I saw on your website you guys do.
Oh yeah,
solar.
we're doing solar, and so I do believe too. Solar's a tough sell right now, just because the money wise, it's just not. It's
Right.
it's double the price for the roof up front. Now you can get your savings like over the course of 10 or 15 years, but most people aren't staying in their home for 10 or 15 years, so it's a hard sell. And unless you're a true energy lover, green hugger, but like most people don't want to just pay extra if they don't get no financial return. But I do believe our solar shingles that are actually integrated into the shingle. So it ain't like those solar panels that people are drilling through your roof. It's a way better option, and it's made by the same manufacturer that does the shingle. So it's cutting edge technology. They're even getting 22% more efficient coming out in January. And so my solar roofs, for the same exact price, I'm going to be able to sell you a system that's even 22% better. So that technology is going to keep getting leaps and bounds better, to where I believe that every roof, no matter where you live, well, tree cover does matter, and there's some things like that, and depending on how your house is faced towards what angle of the sun, and some stuff that's way above my head. I believe that solar roofs are going to be a lot more popular, because solar vehicles are going to be a lot more popular, and we're going to be able to plug in, and our roof's going to power our cars. That's really cool.
That'd be wild.
Cool.
Like
That's what's going to happen. But we need to be able to get those roofs more efficient. Right now, the roofs can barely, take a family of 4 and cut the electric bill down to 0. But if you're plugging both cars in, I got to find more power source. So they got to get more efficient to be able to power the cars and all the stuff in the house. But as the stuff in the house becomes more efficient, it's all going to work. But we are going to be completely self-sufficient. And I love it because since I'm the roofers, I got dumb luck into this business in 2015. I have this massive footprint of all of Pittsburgh that I'm literally covering these roofs with energy efficient roof. So I've never been a roofer. I'm a customer service person that just happens to be in the roofing business. And now with solar and technology and stuff like that, it's just really cool because I get to participate in that. I definitely didn't do it on purpose. I think that was your first original question when we started the podcast is, why'd you pick roofing? Or I'm like, roofing picked me. And I just keep going with it.
And that goes full circle, because like one of the last questions that I have is around the fact that you mentioned earlier too, you said there's thousands of roofing companies in Pittsburgh. People buy from people who they know, like, and trust. That is my Uncle Jim. Shout out Uncle Jim. He preaches that to me. He's like, people will buy from you because they know, like, and trust you. And I like that you went all in on the customer service route. One of my last questions that I have is why, or how do you teach your team to have that same level of customer service and care that you had when you first started that business? Because I think in the entrepreneurial spirit, when you start a business, you're the owner, you're the founder, you care the most, and you have the best, the vision where you want to go, and you are trying to build a product or service that you care about, and you treat those customers like gold. But as you grow, you have to kind of have people who have that same level of care and customer service and care for that customer. How do you help people or your staff kind of have that same drive that you had when you first started the business?
Well, first of all, I only try to hire people that already have the care for other people, that truly care about other humans. And so one of our core values is serve others. And so, they have to demonstrate that they've had some capacity to serve others in the past. They have a passion for serving others. You could tell really quick through questioning if somebody cares just about themselves or if somebody cares really about helping other people. And so that's first and foremost. That's the quickest hack, is to hire people that already have that. Now, to inspire them to care a little bit more and go a little bit deeper, it's through storytelling. It's through consistent team meetings, company events, and tying a story about, Mrs. Jones and how Bob over here helped Mrs. Jones do this, and then what that led to and the why behind it, and then rewarding our people. We have over, I think, 900 5-star Google reviews. I mean, there's restaurants in Pittsburgh that don't have that, and they're getting hundreds of people at $25 a clip that have the option to leave a review. People are spending $25,000 at a time, and I got over 900 5-star reviews, and I've only been open for 9 years. And so it's just an incredible testament to the people. But it's training, it's inspiring, it's storytelling, it's creating that culture where we talk about it all the time. It's not just something that's like, we throw up on a wall or hiding in a process book somewhere. Like it's on our ethos. It's like it seeps out of our blood. Like it's just in the air at Big Fish.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, that's cool.
So there's always one question that we ask every entrepreneur that we interview. And that question is, if you can give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur or someone who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Confirm that you're starting a business and confirm that you actually have the traits of an entrepreneur. And that you're just not doing it because, first of all, you've been rejected everywhere else in life and you haven't found the right team. Don't do it because, your buddy is making it look cool and fun. Don't do it because, you just want to make a lot of money. There are core traits that you have to be successful at being an entrepreneur. One of them is you have to be a visionary. You have to be able to connect dots. You have to have ideas. You have to be able to see around corners. You have to be able to have a sixth sense, right? But you also have to be passionate, okay? You have to be really excited about the product or service that you offer. Because it can't just be about the money, because once you have some of it, then what then what? You have to be passionate about the service. You have to be a problem solver. Being a creative problem solver, because you're going to have problems in your business. Customers are going to have problems you need to go overcome. Employees are going to have problems you need to overcome. Supply chain issues. They are constant problems. We're just in the problem solving business. Entrepreneurship, if that's all it is we're firefighters without having to go into hot places physically, but everything's hot inside. Everything's burning down, right? The other thing that you need to do is you need to be driven. You have to have that little bug inside of you that you can't help but go, right? You can't help but have a little bit of urgency, be a little bit competitive, right? Want to succeed, be self-motivated. You have to be a risk taker, okay? If you don't like risk, your entrepreneurial journey is going to be a little bit different. Now, here's the other thing. There's different stages of entrepreneurs. There's the solopreneur. There's I look at there's your mom that, sells some jewelry, or Tupperware party, Tupperware, that's a good one. There's your mom that's a Tupperware person, right? That's kind of just does it on the side. And then there's Elon Musk. And there's a scale, right? From Tupperware mom to Elon Musk. And they all call themselves entrepreneurs, okay? Because it's a new buzzword. And you just have to really be aware and put yourself where you really think you are on that scale. Because wherever you're at, it doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk, if you're mom, you're going to have to surround yourself with people. They're going to have to help make up for some of the deficiencies that you may have. And the last one is you have to be responsible. This is the one that I find that the young boys in America, the girls are great at this part. It's the young boys that just have a ball of energy. They just go out. They just want to freaking mow everything down, set the world on fire. But what they don't know is they got to put enough money back for a rain day in case they got to take care of an issue that they didn't expect, right? Or they could bankrupt their whole company, right? They can't blame anyone else for their problems. Their default is always hey, it's not the economy's fault. It's not who's the president's fault. It's my fault. You got to look in the mirror and take full accountability. You can't blame anyone else for your lack of success. And when you do have success, it's because of everybody else. It's never because of you.
Yeah.
Right. So I never do this, but I actually have a follow-up question as you were kind of saying
snap!
To this. Yeah,
bonus content, Dylan.
This is the,
How you feel about it? Are we allowed to do that? Just checking.
My follow-up question to this is, I think that is excellent advice, because I always say to people that there is a difference between someone who thinks they can start a business and someone who can actually do it, because it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But do you think that when you're talking about having an entrepreneur confirm that they are capable of doing this before they do it, or they have the traits to do it, do you think those traits can be learned, or is it something that you're born with, and if you don't have it, you're kind of a shit out of luck?
It all depends on the kind of entrepreneur that you want to be. Now, I don't want to put guys into a box, but a lot of so you guys are familiar with lawyers and accountants, right? Not to pick on those guys, but nobody likes lawyers and accountants. Just like nobody likes roofers. But anyway, lawyers and accountants, right? They do the trade really good. They do the widget really good. But very few of them are actually successful entrepreneurs, right? Where they're hiring people, They're making decisions. They're responsible for the whole company, right? But you'll see a lawyer work for firm after firm after firm, or accountant work for firm after firm after firm. By the time they get to 40, 50 years old, they're like, oh shit, I could do this, because they've started to see how business works, and they have a process, and they're more methodical, and they're gonna they can start their own, they can hang their own shingle, they can start their own business, right? But that's because they've seen it done, they've seen it modeled. Now, it all depends on how successful. When they say successful, too, let's just talk about if they really want to grow revenue, and again, that doesn't necessarily mean successful. I'm really careful of saying that. It's not all about the money or the numbers. Sometimes being an entrepreneur, hey man, if I could spend 60 hours at home with my family and I can only work 20 hours, dude, that's successful to me, right? Mm-hmm. And so you just gotta have to figure out what success means to you. But I believe that you can learn some things, but you're not going to be Elon Musk or Gary Vee, you know what I mean? Or you might not even be like Benny Fisher. Guys like us, we're flaming visionary. We are up, but I would only consider myself on the scale of 0 to 100, a 70. But I know that these podcasts come out. I know that there's all this buzz around it, and most people fall below the 50 mark. And there's just a lot of pain there because they don't wake up out of bed and freaking jump up and get excited about getting punched in the face every day. And everyone disappointing them all day long, and their wife hating them, and their kids hating them, and the customers not liking them, and their employees not liking them. Be prepared if you want to have that type of business. You gotta be built for it. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to get back up right when they knock you down, because you will get knocked down. Because if you don't get knocked down, you're not trying hard enough. You're not actually entrepreneuring. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. I just made that up. Entrepreneuring. I don't even know how to spell that. I shouldn't say words I shouldn't spell, but that's a thing. And the other thing is if you're thinking about doing it or you're kind of early stages, Gino Wickman wrote a book. Everyone knows him for Traction and Rocket Fuel the EOS, but he wrote one for the early stage entrepreneur called Entrepreneurial Leap. And he talks about the 6 essential traits of a visionary or of an entrepreneur, which I just mentioned to you guys. But he also talks about the 8 common mistakes to avoid, and also the things to do to be successful, so that way you can learn a little bit from all the pitfalls from other people. And so I think that's important to do a little education. Don't over-educate yourself, because you can read books. The best way to learn entrepreneurship is to get out there and start to do it and take those Mike Tyson haymakers to the face and get back up. Speaking of that, we got that tomorrow night, right? Yeah. I know this isn't going to be aired right away, but I'm really looking forward to that Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight.
It's going to be fun.
You're going to love that. You remember Tyson. These kids don't even know who Mike Tyson is. These kids over here.
My gosh. I can remember when the fights would come on pay-per-view and it would be over in 45 seconds. You'd be an hour and a half listening to everything. But yeah, that's a great analogy, though.
I like that. Keep moving forward. Don't quit. I like it. Benny, thanks for coming on. Thanks for the advice. Thanks for sharing your story. You have a really
great
cool story.
Thanks. Everyone should share their story. It's when you go through a lot of pain in life and you can discover a purpose, in the depths of despair. That's a really, most people want to run from pain. I say embrace the pain, because you can discover purpose there. And then you can learn systems like we talked about, you talked about the Entrepreneur EOS, maybe it's meditation for you, whatever the systems are to be able to deal with it all. And then start to share, your story with other people, because it'll free yourself. You can become your true authentic self when you start to, Gino Wickman says, shed your shit. Mm-hmm. When you start to tell everybody else and help other people, you're actually helping yourself become more free and be your authentic self. So
cool. I like that. Sweet. Benny, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.